The Galactic Union Arena was a place of wonder. It stretched across kilometers of polished white stone and glowing blue metal, built on a space station that orbited a small, calm star. From above, the station looked like a flower with shining petals, each petal being a docking bay where ships from across the galaxy could arrive. Every few years, the Union hosted a special event there, the Cultural Demonstration Games. The games were not wars. They were not battles. Instead, they were something in between a fair and a test where each species brought something from their homeworld to show the others. It could be art, it could be music, or it could be weapons. And weapons, no matter how peaceful the galaxy tried to be, always drew the largest crowds. This year, humanity had been invited. The humans were newcomers to the Galactic Union. They had only been known among the stars for about 50 years, a short time compared to the thousands of years many alien species had spent in space. Most of the older races still considered humans a curiosity, an upstart species from a small blue planet at the edge of the spiral arm. Some even whispered that Earth should never have been invited at all. Yet the humans came. Captain Jonathan Reynolds, tall and broad-shouldered, walked at the head of the human delegation. His uniform was a dark navy blue, decorated with a small silver emblem of Earth. Behind him marched scientists, diplomats, and a few cultural experts carrying cases of artifacts. They moved together through the shining halls of the arena, surrounded by curious alien eyes. Species from 100 worlds stared at them. There were tall, crystalline beings whose bodies glittered like glass. There were scaled lizard folk with golden armor. There were floating creatures that shimmered like jellyfish. They all watched the humans with expressions that ranged from interest to amusement. The amusement came because of the case Reynolds carried. It was not sleek or glowing like the cases of the other delegations. It was old-fashioned, made of dark wood and polished brass. The aliens guessed it must hold some kind of simple tool. Some chuckled already, thinking humans had brought a toy. Inside the arena, the demonstrations had already begun. The Krillin Empire had shown their plasma rifles, long, elegant weapons that released beams of blue fire. The crowd had gasped when the beams sliced clean through thick blocks of steel. The Drixathi Collective had presented their antimatter cannons, so powerful that the arena had to use holograms for the test because no physical target could safely hold the blast. The Valorian Enclave had displayed their personal energy shields, shimmering domes of light that could block lasers, plasma, and even small explosions. Each demonstration was met with applause and admiration. Then came the humans' turn. The announcer, a being with 4 mouths and a voice that echoed across the arena, called out, "Next, we welcome the delegation from Earth, third planet of the Sol system. Humans will now present their cultural artifact." The crowd buzzed with whispers. Some leaned forward in curiosity. Others leaned back, smiling mockingly. Captain Reynolds stepped onto the platform in the center of the arena. The wooden case was in his hands. The lights above shone down on him, making him look small in the vast circle of alien faces. Still, his expression was calm. He set the case on a pedestal and opened it. Inside lay an old object, a flintlock musket. It was long and heavy, with a wooden stock and a barrel of dark metal. There were no lights, no power cells, no advanced parts. Just wood, iron, and simple design. The aliens erupted into laughter. "What is that? A stick?" one shouted. "Is it a decoration? A child's toy?" another mocked. "Perhaps humans are showing us they are still in their Stone Age," a third said. And the crowd roared with more laughter. Some species had translators that turned their laughter into music-like sounds, while others simply screeched or clicked. But no matter the sound, the meaning was clear. They thought it was ridiculous. Captain Reynolds did not react. He simply stood there, one hand resting on the musket. His team behind him kept straight faces, though some of them clenched their fists at the insults. A member of the Valorian Enclave, tall and covered in silver robes, raised a glowing hand. "Human, why do you present this?" he asked in a smooth, superior voice. "This object is nothing compared to the weapons we have seen. It is old, weak, and meaningless." Reynolds met his gaze calmly. "It is old," he admitted, "but it is not meaningless." The aliens laughed again, louder this time. The announcer tried to quiet the crowd, but the noise rolled like thunder. Even species that were normally calm and logical found themselves caught in the humor. The idea that humans had brought such a primitive item to a grand arena of advanced technology was too much for them to resist. Meanwhile, Reynolds slowly lifted the musket from its case. He held it with care, as though it were more valuable than all the glowing weapons around him. The polished wood gleamed in the lights and the barrel reflected faintly. The laughter grew. Some aliens shouted suggestions. Will you throw stones next? Perhaps you will bring fire on a stick. Do you know what real war is, human? But Reynolds stayed silent. The musket in his hands told its own story, a story of old battles, of smoke and fire, of humans standing shoulder to shoulder on muddy fields. A story the aliens did not yet understand. And though the arena still echoed with mockery, there was a small shift in the air. A few sharp-eyed aliens noticed the calmness in Reynolds's face, the way his hands were steady, the way his voice had not risen even once. They began to wonder if perhaps there was more to this strange object than met the eye. The demonstration had not yet begun, and already the galaxy was underestimating humanity. The arena still echoed with laughter. The sound rolled across the wide chamber like crashing waves, bouncing off the high ceiling and polished walls. For many alien spectators, it was not just amusement. It was a release of nervous tension. They had expected something new, something strange, perhaps even something dangerous from the humans. Instead, they saw an object that looked to them like nothing more than a long piece of wood and metal. Captain Reynolds stood calmly in the center of the platform. His human delegation waited just behind him, their faces a mixture of calm discipline and hidden frustration. To them, the laughter was nothing new. Since joining the Galactic Union, humans had often been mocked for their short history in space and their simple technology. Many older species believed humanity was unfit to stand among them. But Reynolds was not here to argue. He was here to demonstrate. Still, the laughter did not stop quickly. Aliens shouted across the arena, their words carried by translator systems into dozens of languages at once. "Human, what will you do with that stick?" called out a crystalline being whose body sparkled like sunlight on ice. "Will you hit your enemies with it?" added a lizard-like soldier, his golden scales flashing in the light. "Perhaps it makes a sound like thunder to scare children," suggested a soft, jellyfish-like alien that floated above the crowd. Each insult drew more laughter, and some of the spectators even began to imitate humans. A tall insectoid raised a piece of broken wood from the floor and pretended to aim it clumsily. Another alien puffed air from its throat, making a crude boom sound. The crowd roared. Through it all, Reynolds did not react. He kept the musket in his hands, turning it slowly so the arena lights caught the polished wood and dark barrel. His silence seemed to bother the loudest hecklers, who grew frustrated that he did not rise to their words. At last, the announcer's four mouths spoke together, trying to restore order. "Delegates of the Union, please. Allow the humans to continue their demonstration. They will now explain their artifact." The crowd quieted only a little. Some still chuckled, though their voices were softer. Reynolds spoke, his voice deep and calm. "This is called a flintlock musket. It was built by my people hundreds of years ago. Long before we traveled the stars, long before we even dreamed of leaving Earth, we used this weapon." He paused, letting his words echo. The translators carried his voice into the minds of all present. "It may look simple to you. It may look weak. But in its time, this weapon changed the world. It gave small armies the power to fight larger ones. It turned battles into thunder and smoke. And though it has been many centuries since soldiers carried these into war, its design still carries a truth my people never forgot." The crowd stirred uneasily. Some aliens frowned. Others leaned closer, not out of respect but out of curiosity. "Truth?" sneered a Valorian noble, his silver robes glimmering under the arena lights. "What truth can wood and iron carry? What truth is there in weakness?" Reynolds looked at him without blinking. "The truth," he said, "that power is not only in the weapon but in how it is used." A low murmur spread through the arena. Some aliens laughed again, though less confidently than before. Others shifted in their seats. One of the Krillin Empire generals, a tall being covered in armor that glowed faintly with plasma energy, stepped forward from the crowd. His voice boomed. "Human, you insult us by bringing this relic. We show our finest weapons, and you show this. If you wish to prove something, then prove it. Show us it can do more than gather dust." The crowd cheered at his challenge. Many agreed. They wanted to see the strange human object do something. If nothing else, they wished to end the farce quickly and move on to the next display. Reynolds gave a small nod. "Very well," he said. From the pedestal, one of the human assistants stepped forward carrying a pouch. Inside were small round balls of lead and a horn filled with black powder. Carefully, Reynolds began to load the musket. The arena grew noisy again. "Look at this," an alien shouted. "He must feed his toy with rocks." "Such slowness. Any real soldier would be dead before the weapon is ready," cried another. "See how he pours dirt into the barrel. Does he hope the dirt will scare us?" Laughter returned, though this time it was mixed with curiosity. The aliens had never seen such a process. For them, weapons were sleek, instant, and efficient. To watch a human carefully pour powder, place wadding, load a lead ball, and then push it down with a rod was like watching an old ritual. Reynolds did not hurry. Every movement was precise, practiced, and calm. His hands were steady, his eyes focused. For him, the act of loading the musket was not slow. It was deliberate. It was respect for the weapon, for history, for the moment. The mockery grew louder. Some aliens began to clap their hands or bang their limbs together in rhythm, making a mocking drumbeat to help the human load his toy. Others sang crude songs about Earth being a backwater world. Yet still, Reynolds did not react. When the musket was loaded, he raised it, resting the wooden stock against his shoulder. The laughter faded slightly as aliens leaned forward. Many expected nothing to happen. They expected the musket to make a small noise, maybe even break apart. The announcer gestured to a set of targets at the far end of the arena. These targets were made of reinforced alloy, designed to withstand the energy weapons already shown. One stood taller than the rest, thick and shining with burn marks from plasma and laser tests. "Human delegate," the announcer said, "you may now demonstrate your artifact." Reynolds aimed the musket slowly, his eyes narrowing. The crowd held its breath, not in fear but in anticipation of another laugh. But before he fired, something unusual happened. The arena grew very quiet. For the first time since the humans had stepped onto the stage, there was no laughter, no jeering. The crowd wanted to see. They wanted to know. And deep in their hearts, though they would not admit it, some of them began to wonder if perhaps they had been too quick to mock. The arena had never been so silent. Tens of thousands of eyes, crystals, lenses, and antennae were locked on the human standing at the center. Captain Reynolds stood steady, the wooden musket held firmly against his shoulder. A thin trail of smoke rose from the touch hole where the powder waited. His finger rested gently on the trigger. For the aliens, silence was unusual. They were used to noise, to constant commentary, to debate and laughter. Yet in this moment all voices faded. Even the announcer's four mouths closed. It was as if the galaxy itself leaned closer, waiting to see what would happen. The target at the far end of the chamber gleamed faintly in the arena lights. It was a tall slab of reinforced alloy, dented and scorched from plasma beams but still strong. Dozens of energy blasts had struck it during earlier demonstrations, yet the slab had never broken. It stood as a symbol of strength, a monument to technology that believed itself untouchable. Reynolds aimed. A slow breath left his lips. His finger pressed down and the musket fired. Boom! The sound shook the arena like thunder. It was nothing like the neat hum of lasers or the sharp crackle of plasma. This was raw, violent, and alive. The explosion echoed across the hall, bouncing off the high ceiling. Smoke poured from the barrel in a gray cloud, filling the air with the smell of burnt powder. The aliens flinched. Some covered their ears, unprepared for such a brutal sound. Others ducked instinctively, thinking the human weapon had somehow exploded. The floor itself seemed to tremble beneath their feet. Then the smoke cleared. The target was no longer whole. Where once had been smooth alloy, now there was a deep, dark hole. The musket ball had punched straight through the slab. It had not burned, it had not scorched, it had pierced. The aliens stared. For the first time since humanity's turn began, no one laughed. The hole was small but undeniable, a perfect tunnel bored through the metal. Every plasma strike before had only scarred the surface. Every energy blast had spread across the shielded alloy, but this simple ball of lead had gone through it like a knife through soft fruit. The crowd gasped, their voices rising in shock and confusion. What is this? How is that possible? The shields did nothing. The announcer's four mouths opened, but no sound came. For once, even he was speechless. Reynolds lowered the musket calmly. He did not smile, he did not boast. He simply blew gently across the barrel, clearing the smoke. Behind him, the human delegation stood tall, their faces proud but disciplined. At the far side of the arena, the Krillin general who had mocked him earlier stepped forward, his glowing armor dimming as he stared at the ruined target. His voice was low, uneasy. That alloy was shielded. It should have stopped any energy strike, Reynolds answered in the same calm voice. It was shielded against energy, not against matter. The word spread across the arena like ripples in a pond. Not against matter. For thousands of years, the galaxy had focused on energy weapons, plasma, lasers, antimatter. They had built shields, armor, and defenses designed to absorb light, heat, and radiation. But they had long abandoned solid projectiles, considering them primitive, wasteful, and weak. Now they saw that their defenses had a hole made by a simple musket ball. Some aliens shifted uncomfortably in their seats. Others whispered in alarm. The laughter that once filled the hall had been replaced by nervous murmurs. A Valorian noble stood, his silver robes trembling. This is an illusion, a trick. No object of wood and iron can do this. Reynolds said nothing. Instead, he turned to his assistant, who handed him another lead ball and more powder. Slowly, calmly, he began to reload the musket. The crowd watched in silence. There was no more mocking drumbeat, no more laughter. Every hand, claw, or tendril was still. The human's ritual of loading, once mocked, now felt terrifying. Every motion carried weight. He finished loading, aimed again, and fired. Boom! The thunder shook the arena a second time. Smoke filled the air once more. When it cleared, the target slab had another hole perfectly beside the first. Two dark tunnels side by side cutting through the alloy. Gasps filled the hall. The crystalline beings whispered to each other in sharp, chiming tones. The insectoid soldiers clicked nervously, their antennae twitching. Even the jellyfish-like floaters dimmed their lights in unease. Reynolds lowered the musket again. His eyes scanned the crowd, calm but steady. This weapon, he said, his voice carrying, is old. It is simple, but it reminds us of something important. We humans do not discard what works. We do not forget. Even when we move forward, we carry our history with us. His words struck harder than the musket balls. Aliens who had once laughed now sat frozen, realizing the meaning. Humans were not weak. They were not foolish. They were different. They thought differently, and in thinking differently, they could find paths others had abandoned. One of the jellyfish beings floated closer, its voice trembling like ripples in water. If such a primitive tool can defeat our strongest defenses, what else have you kept hidden? Reynolds gave no answer. He did not need to. The arena had changed. Moments ago, it had been filled with laughter at a foolish species bringing a toy. Now it was heavy with respect and fear. The humans had not only demonstrated a weapon, they had demonstrated a truth, that the galaxy had overlooked something simple yet powerful, and humans had carried it with them all along. The announcer finally found his voice, though it trembled. Delegates, you have seen the human artifact and its demonstration. But his words were weak compared to the echo still ringing in every alien's mind. The echo of thunder, the echo of the musket, the echo of a truth they could not laugh away. The thunder of the musket still echoed in the minds of every alien in the arena. Long after the smoke cleared and the target slab stood pierced with two perfect holes, silence hung in the air like a heavy blanket. No one laughed anymore. No one dared to. The human stood tall in the center of the stage. Captain Reynolds held the musket calmly at his side, its wooden stock shining faintly in the lights. His team stood behind him with straight backs, their faces firm. They had heard the laughter earlier, but now they saw respect, fear even, in the eyes of the galaxy. The announcer finally spoke, though his usually powerful voice was weak. Delegates of the Galactic Union, the human demonstration is complete. The crowd did not cheer. They did not applaud. Instead, they murmured quietly, voices low and tense. Some whispered about the target slab. Others whispered about the sound of thunder, a sound unlike anything they had heard in centuries of advanced weapons. Still others whispered about the meaning. The arena emptied slowly after the demonstration, but the whispers did not stop. From the shining crystal balconies to the shadowed corners where minor delegations sat, every species talked about what they had seen, and soon, Those whispers grew into debate. In the council chamber later that day, the Union Council gathered in their high chamber, a great circular hall with seats carved for hundreds of species. The ceiling glowed with a false sky, stars and galaxies drifting slowly above them. It was meant to remind everyone of their shared place in the universe. But tonight, unity felt very far away. Representatives argued loudly, their voices overlapping in dozens of languages. The translator system struggled to keep up. "The humans insulted us," shouted a Valorian, his silver robes shimmering with anger. "They mocked our entire defense system." "No," said a crystalline being, her voice sharp like breaking glass. "They revealed something we ignored. We focused only on energy, and now we see a hole in our armor." The Krillon general slammed his armored fist on the table, making the chamber tremble. "Primitive tricks. That is all it was. They cannot match the power of our fleets with sticks and smoke." "But the weapon worked," replied a jellyfish-like diplomat, glowing faintly. "That slab resisted every plasma strike, but not their simple ball of lead. If they can turn old tools into something new, we must be careful." Voices clashed louder. Some believed the humans were dangerous. Others argued they were simply trying to earn respect. A few even suggested humans should be watched closely, perhaps even kept under control before they grew too bold. Yet beneath all the shouting was one shared truth. No one laughed anymore. The human delegation. While the council argued, the humans waited in a private chamber nearby. The walls glowed soft blue and the air was calm, but the atmosphere inside was heavy. The younger human delegates whispered among themselves. Some were excited, proud that they had silenced the laughter of the galaxy. Others were nervous, worried that they had made too many enemies. Captain Reynolds stood near the window looking out at the stars. His face showed no pride, no fear, only quiet thought. One of his aides, a young scientist named Dr. Morgan, finally spoke. "Sir, do you think we went too far?" The musket frightened them. Some of them looked ready to call us a threat. Reynolds turned slowly. His voice was steady. "Good. The room went quiet," he explained. "For years they laughed at us. They thought humans were small, harmless, simple. Today they learned we are not what they think. Respect does not come from asking politely. Respect comes from showing them what we can do." The aides nodded slowly. They understood. Humanity was not seeking war, but it also would not bow its head. Back in the council as the debates raged, some representatives demanded action. "We must investigate Earth's weapons history," said a scaled, lizard-like senator. "If they kept such dangerous tools hidden, what else are they hiding?" "They are unpredictable," added another. "They could disrupt the balance of the Union." But a few voices spoke differently. "Perhaps this is what we need," said the crystalline being again. "We have grown lazy, relying on shields and plasma. The humans remind us that the universe is wide, and danger does not always come in the shape we expect." The hall quieted slightly. These words carried weight. For centuries, the Union had fought wars using energy weapons, confident their shields were enough. They had never imagined a small piece of metal moving faster than sound could undo all of it. It was not just a musket ball. It was a warning, an uneasy realization. As the night stretched on, the council ended its session without resolution. No punishments were declared, no honors given. The humans were neither condemned nor celebrated. They were simply remembered. But in the private halls and shadowed corners, whispers continued. If they can make such weapons from old tools, what will they make with modern technology? They think differently. That makes them dangerous. Perhaps it makes them valuable. Different species saw different futures. Some feared humans might become conquerors. Others saw them as innovators who could bring new strength to the Union. But one truth remained for all. Humans would no longer be ignored. A quiet walk later, as the human delegation left the council halls, many alien eyes followed them. No one mocked them now. No one imitated thunder with their voices. Instead, silence followed the humans down the long corridors. Captain Reynolds walked at the front, the musket once again in its wooden case. He carried it not like a weapon, but like a memory. Dr. Morgan walked beside him, whispering, "Sir, they're afraid of us." Reynolds answered softly, "Fear is the beginning of respect. But it is not enough. They must understand who we are, not just what we can do." The young scientist frowned. And who are we, sir? Reynolds looked ahead, his eyes on the stars beyond the docking bay windows. We are survivors, and survivors always find a way. The change in the galaxy news of the musket spread quickly. Even before the council finished its debates, reports carried across the stars. Every world, every colony, every outpost heard the same story. The humans brought an ancient weapon. The galaxy laughed. Then it fired. On planets of glass and stone, people whispered about the thunder. In the fleets of great empires, commanders wondered if their ships were truly safe. On distant colonies, workers who had never heard of Earth before spoke the name with new caution. The galaxy was vast, filled with wonders and terrors. But tonight, one small blue planet had reminded them all that sometimes the oldest fire still burned hottest. The silent lesson back in the arena, long after everyone left, the target slab still stood. 2 holes marked its center, perfect and clean. Maintenance workers approached it, unsure whether to replace it. One of them, a small insectoid with delicate arms, touched the metal and whispered to himself, "So small, and yet so strong." He stepped back, leaving the holes untouched. Perhaps he thought they should remain a reminder. And so the slab stood there with its 2 scars while the stars turned slowly outside the station, a silent lesson to all who walked past. Never laugh too quickly, never underestimate, and never forget the humans. The musket's echo faded days ago, but the galaxy still felt it. On distant planets, on space stations, in great fleets, and in quiet villages under alien suns, the story spread. It carried from mouth to mouth, from ship to ship, from world to world. Every version began the same way. The aliens laughed at the human gun until it fired. No matter who told it, the ending never changed. The laughter turned to silence. The silence turned to fear. And that fear turned into respect. In the Council's shadow, the Galactic Union Council met again 3 days after the demonstration. This time the chamber was full before the session even began. Delegates who often skipped routine meetings made sure they were present. Even the more arrogant nobles who usually came late arrived early, their robes and jewels glimmering in the chamber lights. They had only one subject: humanity. The Valorians were the first to speak, their voices sharp and filled with anger. "These humans seek to embarrass us. They use old tools to show us we are weak. We must not allow such behavior. They should be restricted, watched." But the crystalline speaker from the day before stood again, her voice ringing like glass struck by a hammer. "No, they did not embarrass us. We embarrassed ourselves. We laughed. We thought we were safe. We thought our shields made us untouchable. The humans showed us our mistake." The Krillon general spoke next, his armored fist clenched. "If they still use such weapons, they are dangerous. If they have moved beyond them, they are even more dangerous. Either way, we cannot ignore them." The chamber filled with noise once again, translator systems struggling to keep up. Some voices called for restrictions. Some called for alliances. Others whispered about fear. But beneath all of it was one truth. Humanity had changed the balance. The human delegation, in their quarters, Captain Reynolds and his team listened to the debates through the Council's broadcast system. His aides argued quietly among themselves. Some believed the aliens would soon offer treaties. Others feared the Council might turn against Earth. Dr. Morgan, the young scientist, looked at Reynolds. "Sir, do you think they understand? Do they see why we brought the musket?" Reynolds answered after a long pause. His voice was steady as always. "They understand part of it. They see the power of the shot. They see their weakness. But the musket is more than power. It is history. It is memory. It is survival." He placed a hand on the wooden case where the musket rested. "This weapon is old, yes, but it changed the course of our world. It reminds us that humans adapt, humans endure, and humans remember. That is what they must learn." The delegation nodded quietly. They knew the captain was right. The musket was not just a gun, it was a message. Across the stars while the Council debated, the galaxy whispered. On mining colonies, workers argued if humans would one day fight the Union. On merchant ships, traders wondered if humans could be allies in dangerous regions. On distant farming worlds, children imitated the sound of thunder with their voices, pretending to hold invisible muskets. Some feared, some admired, but none ignored. For the first time in history, humanity was not invisible among the stars. The Council's decision. After long hours, the Council finally gave their judgment. Humanity would remain in the Union, No restrictions, no punishment. But no rewards either. The decision seemed neutral, but every delegate knew the truth. The humans had won something greater than titles or medals. They had won attention. They had won caution. They had won respect. A private meeting that evening, a group of high-ranking delegates requested a private meeting with Captain Reynolds. They met in a quiet chamber, far smaller than the grand hall, lit by soft blue lamps. A Valorian noble, still proud despite his unease, spoke first. "Human, why do you carry such old weapons? You have energy arms now, yes? Why cling to the past?" Reynolds looked at him calmly. "Because the past teaches us. We do not throw away what works. We remember where we came from. That memory makes us strong." The crystalline speaker leaned forward, her voice like a bell. "And what do you want from us? Why show us this?" Reynolds placed the musket gently on the table between them. "I want you to understand. Humanity is not to be mocked. We may be new among the stars, but we are not weak. We have faced war, famine, fire, and darkness, and we survived. This musket is proof of that. You may laugh at it, but do not laugh at us." The chamber fell silent. None of the delegates spoke further. They looked at the musket with new eyes, seeing not just wood and iron, but the shadow of centuries of human struggle behind it. The departure, when the humans finally prepared to leave the station, the arena was quiet once more. The target slab still stood with its 2 holes untouched, left there as a reminder. Workers and guards walked past it carefully, their eyes drawn to the scars. As the human ship prepared for launch, crowds gathered in the docking bay. Not to mock, not to laugh, but to watch. Some even raised their hands in gestures of respect. Others stood in silence, unsure how to greet a species they had once called primitive. Captain Reynolds walked up the boarding ramp last, the musket case in his hands. He paused at the top, looking back at the watching crowd. His face was calm, his eyes steady. He spoke only once, his words carried by translators to every ear. "Remember this. Power is not always what you expect. Humanity remembers. Humanity adapts. Humanity endures." Then he stepped aboard, and the ship lifted slowly into the stars. The legacy long after the humans left, the memory remained. The council continued to argue. Empires continued to whisper, and fleets continued to train. But the laughter was gone. Instead, there was caution. Instead, there was respect. On dozens of worlds, the story became legend. Children pretended to carry muskets, shouting "boom" as they played. Soldiers studied the weakness of their shields, wondering how else they might be broken. Leaders lay awake at night, wondering if the humans would one day bring more than just an old gun. And in the arena, the target slab remained. 2 small holes side by side, carrying a lesson greater than any speech. The final lesson. The galaxy had many great weapons. It had ships that could cross light years in moments, beams that could cut through mountains, and shields that could block suns. But in the end, it was not the brightest beam or the hottest flame that shook the Union. It was a piece of wood and iron. It was a weapon from the past, carried by a people who never forgot their history. The aliens had laughed at the human gun, and then it fired. They would never laugh again.